Hey, everybody. Welcome to the EverydayFI podcast, the show that explores the lives of everyday people on the path to financial independence. Hearing these stories will teach you in real ways how to forge your own path to financial freedom. And today I'm super excited about our guest, Ryan, who was actually on the show in one of the first episodes of EverydayFI. I will link his prior episode in the show notes for sure. But he started a new venture all about volunteer work and a way to bring our community together through service to others. And I'm super excited to get to talk to him about this venture and to let you know how you can get involved as well. Also, what you'll hear in this episode is why he started this, which is very close to my own heart. So stay tuned to hear all about Ryan's new venture about volunteer service right after this. Welcome to Everyday Fi, and welcome to our faces, Ryan and me. I'm so excited that I actually get to be putting these on YouTube now. I don't know why I'm so giddy about that, but it just makes me feel like I have arrived as a creator. I don't know. But anyway, I am here with my friend Ryan. You guys might recognize his voice because he was in episode 6 of the show. And we were just talking before we recorded that I'm a little embarrassed by that episode because it was before I had crafted my ability to edit podcast. And there's lots of very echoey sound. I think, Ryan, you said you were on your iPad in Costa Rica. So it's very grainy. So you guys who have followed us since then, thank you so much for sticking around and bearing with me while I try to figure my life out. But yeah, hey Ryan, it's great to have you back.
Hey Megan. Yeah, it's great to be back. Great to see you again. And yeah, I think you've been doing a great job recording this whole time, whether or not it's the early ones or the newer ones. But yeah, great to see you.
Yeah, for sure. So today we have a very specific topic that we want to talk about. Ryan started this amazing new, I don't know if you want to call it company or volunteer endeavor, but it's called the FI Service Corps. And I can't wait to dive in on that. But I want to touch on some of the things that your prior episode we were talking about because it's been almost a year. That episode, like I said, was episode 6. It came out, let me check my notes, June 17th of last year, 2024. We recorded on May 17th, 2024. So it's been almost a year. We're recording this show today on April 11th of 2025. And there's several things that I think have changed in your life. So back then you were engaged, and I think you're married now, right? When did you get married? How did that go?
Yeah, I am married now. We got married in July of 2024, and it went great. We got married in Colombia, South America. That's where my wife is from. So we had this really fun mix of, my side being American, traveling to Colombia, and then her family and friends that were from Colombia. And yeah, it was a really amazing, fun-filled weekend of salsa dancing and traditional Colombian music and food. And yeah, it was amazing wedding. And then we were able to go on a extended honeymoon after. So we spent 6 weeks traveling through Europe. Yeah, just packed our backpacks and we're bouncing around. And yeah, so living the married life now.
That sounds amazing. I wish I could take 6 weeks off and just live in Europe. I'm very jealous of that. So, and then also last time you guys were looking for a place to live, and I think you said that you had about a year to figure that out. Did you guys figure that out? Where are you guys living now?
Yeah, so just a little background on that. We moved to New Haven, Connecticut in 2022 because my wife Julie started a nurse practitioner program at Yale, and it's a 3-year program, so her graduation is coming up pretty soon. And I always kind of viewed New Haven as just a transitional stepping stone kind of place for us because we used to live in Washington, D.C. for many years, and we have a lot of friends there, a lot of connections. And then we were also open to moving somewhere totally new because she's going to have this, amazing set of credentials where she can probably find a job anywhere. So we were just playing with lots of different ideas but I found that it was kind of taking me out of like the present moment and taking me away from being able to embrace the community where I was living. So I've kind of moved away from that mindset and, really tried to get more involved with my community and, interact with people that live here and, and just sign up for various activities. Like I do weekly volleyball and weekly run club. We do trivia nights at bars. So, we really started to enjoy it here. And also we decided that financially, it actually makes a lot of sense for us to remain here for the foreseeable future because I bought a 4-unit multifamily in the summer of 2023. So we live in the top unit and we rent the 3 units below. And because of that, our living expense is very low. Um, and so it's been great, these last couple years, kind of being like live-in landlords. And yeah, we decided that it'll be a great opportunity to, keep it going and allow her to, build up her savings after these 3 years of being a student, where she can start her job, stay in New Haven, save money. And for me, it'll be a great opportunity to not have a high living expense while I'm pursuing this new venture, Phi Service Corps. So we're gonna stay in New Haven for the time being.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, yeah, I get it. If you've already established a community somewhere, I can see how it could be difficult to leave. I know New Haven is, I've been there before to visit Yale, and I don't know if anybody else has been to New Haven, but I will say I visited almost a decade ago, and it was a pretty rough town. The nicer parts were only around Yale, and the other parts were a little sketchy, but it's still Connecticut, so it's beautiful weather and things like that. But I totally get it. I didn't think that Durham, North Carolina was going to be where I settled, but I established a bunch of friends here. I love my gym. I love my yard. The town is a really cool, edgy town that hasn't been discovered yet by the rest of the country. We're kind of like an Austin, Texas, but nobody knows about us, which I hope it stays that way. I'm like, why would I leave? The only reason why I'd leave is because the weather, it's way too hot. But yeah, this long-winded way of saying I totally get that.
I have a friend in the Phi community who is moving to Durham, so maybe word's going to get out and people are going to start coming to your town. I don't know. But
No, stay away.
yeah, I know, right? But yeah, we've come to really enjoy New Haven. We live in a nice neighborhood that's a little bit north of the downtown, and just a few blocks from our house, we can walk to a park. There's lots of hiking trails. You can hike to a summit and you can see Long Island Sound. There's a river that runs by where we can paddleboard. And then you get in your car and drive a little bit, and there's tons of state parks all around. So there's a lot to this area that we haven't really given ourselves a chance to really embrace. So after being here for almost 3 years now, we've developed some friendships like that, like you said about Durham, that just kind of comes with time. You have to give that stuff time to blossom.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Okay. And then the last thing that we talked about, well, this wasn't the only thing we talked about in our other episode, but the last thing that I want to follow up on is you're a CPA and you said that you were in the midst of a gap. I think you were in month 8 of your gap and you had a job lined up in October with a small company. You were going to be the CFO from what I remember, and they had a 4-day work week. So did that happen? Are you still there? Are you enjoying that? What's going on there?
Everything fell apart. So yeah, in September 2023, I left my job and my initial plan was to take 1 year off and then resume work at a different organization. And I quit my job not because I reached financial independence, but I did have enough of a financial runway to, feel comfortable leaving for an extended period of time. And that's mainly due to a few successful house flips that I did in the past. And the other thing that made me feel comfortable leaving my job was I had an arrangement with an organization that I really liked where their CFO was retiring. And she's been like a mentor of mine over the years, and she had called me and said like, hey Ryan, I'd love for you to take over my position when I retire. And just with that, I went off of that and kind of went on faith and quit my job, decided to take a year off because this position was supposed to start in October of 2024. So as time went on, I did a few rounds of interviews with them. I met their staff, I met the president, I met some board members, and it got to the point where they were asking me like, Ryan, what questions do you have for us for you to make your decision to work for us? So nothing was actually in writing and in a contract, but verbally it felt like it was going to happen. And then we were on our honeymoon in August, and I got the call that they decided to go with another candidate. So, yeah, board of directors got involved in the job search process, and the treasurer of the board referred a colleague of his who has many years of CFO experience and I guess was a better fit for the role. So they decided to go in that direction. And yeah, they called me when I was on my honeymoon, and I expected to feel devastated when I heard that news. But yeah, surprisingly, like that devastation feeling never came. I ended up just kind of feeling like I kind of felt this sense of freedom. Like if I want, I could extend this time off longer, or I can look for other opportunities out there. So yeah, the job that I thought I had lined up ended up falling through. And I actually don't have any regrets about it though. Like I'm happy that I left my previous job. It enabled me to do all kinds of extended travel and just kind of like re-simplify my life. I just was able to focus on some basic things, during this time off, like extended travel and studying Spanish and planning this wedding and honeymoon, and then incorporating things like exercise and home renovations just as like a regular part of my life.
Well, it sounds like it was, what is it, a gift in disguise. And it's, I don't know if you are doing any CPA work right now. Are you still off? Are you still taking your sabbatical? Is it going to be, are you just retired now?
I'm not retired now, but I'm kind of just going day by day. And my main focus now is this new venture, FI Service Corps. Um, I had this idea to organize a volunteer trip for the FI community. At first, all I wanted to do was just put a trip together and invite some FI friends. And it turned out to be super successful. Everybody that signed up for it, incredibly enthusiastic the entire time. Word spread, they told their friends in the FI community, and there was a ton of interest that was gained after this one trip. Eventually, it felt like a calling that I had to pursue. So, for the time being, I decided to pause the job search and focus on building FI Service Corps.
And that's why we're here. So great segue. You should be a podcast host. That was amazing. So, yeah, I wondered if this job not working out is kind of what led to the FI Service Corps blossoming. So, really, it's a great thing that you didn't get this job. I'm sorry to say, because the FI Service Corps, it looks incredible. I really want to join one of them. I know you've sent me the one that is going to happen in Asheville soon. Unfortunately, I don't think we are able to make that. I think we're either out of town or something. And then the one in Colorado is literally like a week and a half after we leave Colorado. So that we just missed it. So, but someday I'm going to do one of these trips, but I really want to know, what is it for people who don't know what this is yet?
Yeah, so FI Service Corps is a mission-driven organization that focuses on empowering the financial independence community to give back by organizing experiential group volunteer trips and events. We have two taglines. One is volunteer with friends, and the other is investing in action, impact, and community. And yeah, I think that this concept came about at a perfect time for the FI movement. Right now there's been a focus on, getting together for in-person like meetups and events, and there's a hunger in the FI community to get together and to interact with one another. And that's why Camp FIs and the FI Freedom Retreats sell out so quickly. So this is just another thing that complements that hunger. And also there's an evolution with the FI movement right now where the focus is less on this race to financial independence at any cost. We're no longer focused on cutting expenses and kind of like depriving your way into FI. Now the focus is, being more intentional and, focusing on purpose and meaning and impact on your journey. So I'm not saying that Fi Service Corps solves those two problems, but it's something that kind of harnesses those opportunities and, takes that energy and puts it towards, good causes and things that can hopefully make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what inspired you to start this? I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to get that full story.
Yeah, it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, and it was after our first podcast came out. So, when we were recording last, like almost a year ago, you were asking me like what my post-fi life would look like. And I just rambled for a while, but one of the things I said was that I, I would like to use my extra time to volunteer more. And, you kind of dug into that and asked me about volunteering, and I talked about volunteer trips that I've done in the past, but I had never considered organizing a trip of my own. And then when the episode came out, you wrote a little summary of our podcast. And one of the things that you said is learn how Ryan navigates challenges and aligns his financial goals with his passion for serving others. So when I read that, it really blew me away. Like I didn't I wouldn't think to describe myself like that, but the fact that, that was the impression that I gave off to somebody who, who I had just met and had an hour-long conversation with was really cool. And in that moment, I decided like that's the person that I want to be, and that kind of planted the seed to this idea to organize a volunteer trip specifically for the Phi community. And then I thought back to a breakout session that I was in a previous Phi event where the topic was giving back. And a lot of the people talked about like being members of their local Rotary Club or doing financial literacy classes at their local library. But a lot of other people talked about their desire to give back and, ideas they had to, maybe volunteer at a animal shelter or Habitat for Humanity in their community. I came out of that session with this feeling that there's this desire to give back, but it could be kind of lonely and people might not know where to start. So that's kind of where the concept of volunteer with friends was born. So it initially was an idea to put together just a group trip for 5 friends, and it was incredibly successful. And yeah, I ended up feeling like it was a calling, and I have been, yeah, organizing trips ever since.
That's so incredible. And I'm going to admit that I teared up just a smidge when you were talking about this because that makes me feel so good that, I mean, I just, I don't know if I wasn't trying to like inspire you to do anything, but I saw you as somebody who definitely knew what his values were and you were taking the steps to align your life like that. And so that's just who you were even a year ago. So to me, this is just the next iteration of that. But I love that you see that this inspired you to do this. So that makes me feel good. So thank you. So, how did you go about starting this? What are kind of the ins and outs of starting a volunteer organization like this? How did you plan your first trip? How did you get people to sign up?
Yeah, so a lot of my past experience really complements, putting this stuff together. I've done a handful of, volunteer trips as an individual volunteer. And, I also have, a business background, an accounting background, and, both those things have, kind of married themselves together with building this organization. But specifically for the first, what I'm calling the pilot trip for Phi Service Corps, I ended up partnering with a local nonprofit in New Orleans who I've volunteered with in the past. And yeah, I focused on doing what was familiar to me. So I was familiar with this organization that does home construction. They build opportunity homes and they sell them at a discount for families in need. And I chose New Orleans because it's my favorite city. And also, I've been there a handful of times, so I know the area. And yeah, once I made contact with the organization and set our dates for volunteering, I then worked on finding, adequate lodging for our group. And I wanted to focus on a convenient location and lodging where we're all comfortable and also lodging that has lots of communal areas where we can all, easily hang out together as a group. And so once those two things were set up, the volunteering and the lodging, I just texted like 8 of my friends, mostly people who I met in Bali on my first like official FI event, like over a year and a half ago. And the whole idea was reinforced when the whole group just said yes immediately. Like there was no hesitation. I just got like 8 yeses, and we all came together in New Orleans. And, we kind of figured it out as we went. For future trips, I'm getting better and better when it comes to logistics outside of volunteering because, I learned that if a bunch of people are coming together, traveling to an area, we want to hang out together and we want to have meals together. We want to do activities together. So, in New Orleans, we tried to focus on group meals. We went to a lot of Cajun restaurants downtown and we did some activities that supported local businesses. So, one of the things that we did was we went on a ghost and voodoo walking tour of the French Quarter. So, that was really fun. Lots of spooky stories and local history. And then we ended the trip on our last day with a cemetery tour and then just walking Bourbon Street, checking out French Market. So, yeah, all in all, it was an amazing experience where we got to do, volunteer work that felt very important and it felt like it made a real impact. And then we also got to enjoy each other's company and support the local economy in the area.
Yeah, that's incredible. And NOLA is such a cool city. I was just there in January. And so I know some of the places that you're talking about. And I also did a ghost tour. It was really fun. So this was your pilot, was in NOLA. When was this?
This was in December 2024. Um, we have upcoming service trips. So in May we're going to Asheville. In June we're going to go to Tampa, and in July we're going to go to Colorado Springs. But in addition to those trips, I've organized a couple events where I'm calling them local days of service, and I've invited the local Choose Fi Facebook group to come out, get together, volunteer for just a couple hours, and then we all go to a brewery. So there's been a total of 3 trips/events that Fi Service Corps has done. But yeah, we have a lot on the horizon.
Yeah, it's incredible you went from your pilot to having now three coming up. I've actually been sending your links to a couple of people that I know in Colorado. And I guess what I'm curious about is how many people can come on your trips.
Yeah, I want to keep it small. I think that small groups are what makes Fi Service Corps so special. Like with a small group, we can all stay together at the same house. The group size is really dictated by our volunteer partner. So wherever we're going, we partner with a local organization that relies on volunteers to execute their mission. And, I seek out organizations that take volunteer groups. Like there's a lot of organizations that work with corporate groups or Boy Scout troops or mission trips. So Phi Service Corps kind of falls into that category. So, for example, with Colorado Springs, I reached out to an organization called Keep Colorado Springs Beautiful. And once I determined that that was a good fit, I spoke with their executive director and we nailed down a few dates. And I asked her, what's a good capacity? What's a good number of people that can come out and volunteer? And she said, a good number is 15. If there's more, then we're kind of falling over each other. So, I kind of let that dictate the group size. And then once that was established, I looked for lodging that can accommodate 15 people comfortably. But I want to keep it that way. Asheville is going to be 12 people. So like that 12 to 15 person like group is the sweet spot for us, I think. In the future, we'll find an opportunity where 40 or 50 people can come out and, it could be at a retreat center like Camp Fi and we can all do something together. But for now, I like the small groups. I think that it really fosters a deeper connection with each other. When you're in a small group and staying together in the same place for, 4 or 5 days, then it's really hard to walk away from there without closer connections and, with long-term friendships.
Yeah, for sure. And are you able to get enough people to sign up? How quickly are you seeing them sell out, do you think?
Yeah, so the three trips that are coming up this summer they're all open for registration. The only one that's sold out is Asheville, which is in May next month. But the Tampa trip at this moment still has 5 spots open for registration. Colorado Springs has 9 spots. So it's it's not at the level of Camp Fi yet where you need to register on the day that it opens. We're working on getting the word out, raising awareness that we exist, and getting eyes on this. And for people that do learn about Fi Service Corps, like it's been an incredibly amazing reception. I think there's so many socially conscious members of the Fi community that are excited about this idea. So yeah, events don't sell out right away. I'm hoping that the upcoming ones do sell out. But yeah, that's all kind of just need to work on. Well, we need to work on like getting the word out, spreading the word and getting our friends on board. And yeah, so still spots are still open.
Yeah, that's great. I am curious what lessons you learned from the pilot. I know you said you were kind of doing it in your comfort zone, but was there anything you learned that you're taking into planning the rest of these?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of learning as I go. Like with each trip, I'm, kind of sorting out what works and what doesn't work. And after each trip, I like to send out a survey to the participants to learn about, how they felt about the volunteer work, how they felt about the lodging, and just get their overall feedback on the trip. But yeah, I think what I've learned is that there's so much excitement and enthusiasm from the Phi community, from people who learn about this idea. And it's been super gratifying because, this was just an idea in my head that I stewed on for a while before bringing it into existence. And so, yeah, what I learned is that it's definitely a feasible venture that people are excited about. And yeah, I think as time goes on, we'll kind of develop the formula for a successful service trip by finding, really good fits for our volunteer partner organizations, really good fits for our lodging, because a lot, these upcoming trips are with organizations that I've never worked with before. And some of them are in locations that I never spent an extended period of time before. So I'd love to get to the point where there's recurring trips that happen, in the same location with the same volunteer work, maybe on an annual basis. Like I would like to go back to, I'm planning to go back to New Orleans in November and basically repeating the trip that we did last December. So working with the same organization, staying at the same accommodations because, that all worked really well. With Asheville, we're working with a nonprofit that focuses on disaster recovery. They're in Asheville responding to Hurricane Helene, which hit last fall. So we'll be doing a lot of debris cleanup and like mucking and gutting of houses, getting them ready to be repaired. And I'm really excited about the vacation rental that we have. It has like a game room, it has a hot tub, a fire pit. So, that one I think could be a really good fit for our group. And if it goes well, maybe Asheville is a recurring trip, maybe not disaster response, but it could, there's a lot of organizations that do all kinds of, charity work in the community, like trail work or home building. And I'm also playing with the idea of piggybacking off of Camp Fi. So there's a handful of locations where there's multiple Camp Fis that happen. So in Colorado Springs, there are, I believe, 4 Camp Fi weekends, like back to back to back. So the Colorado Springs trip in July is strategically going to be the Monday to Friday between Camp Fi Rocky Mountain week 2 and week 3. I think it's a great way for people that are going to one of those Camp Fis to extend their trip and travel with purpose and, continue hanging out with friends. I want to, see if that's successful and incorporate that into the future because there's a few other areas where there's multiple Camp Fis, like Minnesota, Florida, Spain. So we'll see.
Oh my gosh. Volunteering in Spain would be so cool. I was wondering, I know you said you do day volunteer, I'm assuming in Connecticut, right?
Yeah. I'm a member of a few different Choose
Mm.
Fi Facebook groups just because I've lived in different areas and I've traveled to different areas. So in Connecticut in January, there was a beach cleanup. And so yeah, I reached out to the Choose Fi Connecticut Facebook group, invited them out to participate in the beach cleanup. A few people showed up and we had a great time just, picking up trash and then sorting things for recycling and then went to a tavern afterwards. And I spent the month of March in Salt Lake City, and I joined the Salt Lake City Choose Fi Facebook group. And the weekend before I left, I decided I wanted to, do something to give back to that community. Just 'cause I loved it so much out there. I skied for the entire month, and it's such a beautiful area. Everybody's so friendly, so I wanted to do something to give back. And I invited the Choose Fi Salt Lake City Facebook group to come out and volunteer at a donation center. This was a donation center that takes volunteers to do 2-hour shifts sorting donations. And so, yeah, a few people came out and we spent 2 hours just like going through bags of donated clothes and categorizing them and getting them set up in the donation center, and then went to a brewery afterwards. So, yeah, I like the events aspect of our mission. They're not very hard to plan, and it's a great alternative to, a standard Phi meetup.
Yeah, absolutely. I love standard Fi meetups for
Mhm.
sure, but I feel like when you are giving together as well as being together, it just creates an even deeper connection than you would develop otherwise. I've volunteered before with people, and it always creates this sense of like, we are doing something good right now together. And, that it just creates this bond. And I love that you're doing this. And it makes me curious, are you targeting certain kinds of volunteering?
Yeah, so the type of volunteering that I look for Phi Service Corps are areas where the volunteers don't need to have any experience and they don't have to have any kind of specialized skills. So I think that's what makes Phi Service so accessible. Like there's no barrier to entry when it comes to the volunteer work. And anything that you don't know how to do, you can be trained on site by the staff of the volunteer partner. So as far as picking the cause area that I want to work with, it's really just that inspire me. We initially went to New Orleans and did these opportunity homes because that's what I've worked on in the past. And it feels really nice to be a part of something that helps that community. It kind of benefits me, reinforcing my construction skills, learning new skills that I can apply to my life back home. It's things that I'm interested in, and it's organizations that take volunteers and don't require any kind of experience.
Yeah, that's great. What I hear you saying is that there's no real barrier to entry here for anybody who might be listening to this who wants to get involved. I'm guessing the only requirement is that you are able-bodied and able to work with your hands a little bit and things like that. But you don't have to know how to use a circular saw necessarily. They might teach you that.
Right.
Maybe, I don't know, or not. You might cut your thumb off, so maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that's the beauty of what we do. There's a lot of individuals in the Phi community that have this desire to give back. And so I want Phi Service Corps to be a resource to handle any kind of barrier that comes with that. So I want to take care of all the logistics when it comes to finding a good fit for a volunteer partner, finding a good fit for the volunteer work, finding a good fit for lodging where you're comfortable and you can easily hang out with your other fellow volunteers. And then also your meals and your activities, like during your downtime. So all those things are the value that I want Phi Service Corps to provide to people.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Is there anything else about Phi Service Corps that you want the audience to know that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I want people to know that Phi Service Corps isn't the only way to give back. Like, if people are interested, like those local days of service that I mentioned, those are easy to put together. So I would be really cool if that kind of swept the Phi community and, these local Phi groups incorporated that into their meetups. And I wouldn't be offended by it at all if it's not through Phi Service Corps. So, yeah, I want people to know that it's just a matter of reaching out to an organization that accepts volunteers and figuring out if it's a good fit, setting a date, and gathering people together. Um, so I think that's the main thing I want people to take away.
What I want to know is where your love of volunteering and giving back stems from.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I never really considered myself like a lover of volunteering, but thinking back, it's been a part of my life for many, many years. But the first major experience that I can remember was right after college. So I graduated college in May of 2010, and I didn't have to start my official career in the real world until September. So I had my whole summer free. And my best friend also had his whole summer free after college. So we had this dream to spend our summer in the Caribbean, like on an island. But the problem was neither one of us had any money back then, so we couldn't afford to do something like that. But as fate would have it, he ended up meeting a guy who did this volunteer work exchange program at this eco resort in St. John in the Virgin Islands. And as soon as I learned about this guy, I was like, I'm coming home. We're going to take this guy to lunch. I want to learn all about this program. And so, yeah, we learned about it. It was a really cool program where this eco resort offered a volunteer exchange program where you could come and work either in their maintenance department or their housekeeping department or their kitchen in exchange for free lodging at the resort. So we applied for it, we got in, and we spent the month of July after college volunteering on the maintenance team. And it was an incredible experience. We worked from like 8 p.m. to 2 p.m. every day. And we just did, we took care of the trash at the resort. We did all kinds of repairs all around the place. And then during our downtime, we got to enjoy being on an island. And we did lots of hikes and spent a lot of time at the beach. We're both scuba certified, so every weekend that we had off, we did a dive. And yeah, that was my first exposure to like extended volunteer work. And, it was incredibly gratifying because we were able to work towards the mission of this organization and then also benefit ourselves with this free lodging and being on an island. And, we made a ton of friends and ended up having an incredible time. So, yeah, after that, I just kind of kept an eye out for opportunities during my working career and eventually stumbled across this organization, SBP. It stands for St. Bernard Project, and it's named after the St. Bernard Parish in New Orleans. And that's the parish that got hit the hardest by Hurricane Katrina in 2005. But they were established to do disaster recovery. And then they ended up remaining there and established the headquarters. And they're basically like a local Habitat for Humanity in New Orleans. And yeah, I've done a handful of trips as an individual volunteer where I went for a week at a time to volunteer with them on these construction projects. So yeah, it's always been a part of my life. And I guess I never realized how important it was to me until I really sat back and thought about it and decided to organize a volunteer trip of my own.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know there's a lot of work for your stay, volunteer for your stay types of things. I think I want to say it's WOOF is one of them, is World Organization of Farmers.
Like organic farming. Yeah.
Organic farming, yeah.
Hmm.
And I know somebody who did that, and she had a great time. I think she did it for like a year, and she got to live on this farm and just learn all this stuff about farming. And I forget the country she was in. I think it was somewhere in Europe where she got to do it, which is just, I mean, fabulous. And she did it right after high school. So she was very young when she got to do it.
Yeah, I think that is something I would want the FI community to know about, not necessarily FI Service Corps, but just giving back in general. Giving back can be such a compliment to your FI journey because, like your friend who's doing the woofing, it's a great way to travel with purpose without the expense of having to pay for lodging somewhere. I've done something similar with an organization. There's a website called helpx.net. It's basically a volunteer board where a lot of organic farms or various like hostels will publish volunteer opportunities and you can sign up for a volunteer work stay arrangement. Yeah, I know the FI community is very into travel hacking, and it's mainly focused on credit card points, but I think giving back can be the ultimate travel hack.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, if somebody wants to get a hold of you and learn more about Fi Service Corps, where they sign up, or if they just want to ask you questions about it, where can they reach you?
Yeah, so my email is ryan@fiservicecorps.org. It's Phi Service CORPS. And our website is fiservicecorps.org. On the website, you can learn all about the organization and what we do and see our upcoming trips. And there's also an option to sign up for our mailing list so you can get notified about our upcoming opportunities. On the website, you can find our Instagram. We try to post pictures of our, various volunteer events. So yeah, check out the website, and my email's on there as well. So, super happy to get in touch with anybody who's interested in learning more.
Yeah, great. And of course, I'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, Ryan. This was an awesome conversation. I'm so glad we got the opportunity to talk about Fi Service Corps and what you're doing. And I love that you're doing this. And yeah, I hope to have you back for a third time.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It was great. Thanks so much for having me on, Megan. I appreciate your interest in this and shining a spotlight on Phi Service Corps.
Thanks for listening to the Everyday Fi podcast. If you're loving this show, here are some things you can do. Number 1, subscribe in your favorite podcast player and share the show with your friends and family. You can also find us on YouTube now. Some of the videos actually have our faces. Number 2, please leave a review. I am always looking for ways to improve the show. Number 3, check out my website, EverydayFI.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and leave comments for myself and the guest. Number 4, if you're interested in sharing your own financial independence story and connecting with other community members, you can find a submission form at everyday-fi.com/podcast. And lastly, number 5, join my Patreon membership for only $5 a month at patreon.com/everydayfi podcast. This is a one-woman show, so every little bit of support really helps. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.